All right, guys, thank you guys for being here. We got Michael Wagner, Pool Scouts, telling you about getting a product to market. He has helped with a lot of different things on the market. He'll talk about some of those things. You guys are going to be in for a treat today because this is going to be some really solid information. Michael, take it away.
Great. Well, thank you. First of all, it's an honor to be here. I loved when, first of all, I just got to meet Zach recently, and ironically, we were interviewing in Pool Scouts to find a marketing director for Pool Scouts, which is a startup, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But one of the candidates who I had known who worked in one of the agencies that I had worked with in another part of my life, who actually we didn't offer the job to, introduced me to Zach. And I love what he's doing. I love this whole notion of really entrepreneurship, and it's something that I personally have been very fortunate to have some great opportunities to pursue, and something I like talking about at the end of the day too. So I've had some experience. There's always somebody that knows a lot more. There's always somebody that's done things differently. So I'll share some of my experiences with you, and I welcome feedback, and I welcome any sort of questions at any time during the presentation. I hope it's less of a presentation and more of a conversation at the end of the day. So I'll talk a little bit about me, but really try and keep it to specifics around experiences. I was fortunate to start my first kind of real job. I went to college in North Carolina, and immediately following college took a job with an insurance company called Jefferson Pilot. It doesn't exist anymore. It was based in Greensboro, North Carolina. Got a job before I left college. My dad is a Navy captain. He's retired, and if you went to school for more than 4 years, you were paying for 100% of everything, and it was always implied, don't come back home after college, go get a job, you're on your own kind of thing, which is for me was great. Not that I was going to slack around, but anyways, I got a job in North Carolina in insurance, and really spent my first year of out of college driving around western North Carolina thinking, man, this is a waste of my brain. So I was miserable. It was a good job, it was a good salary and a company car, and my parents were proud of me, and it was the right thing to do, and you worked in the insurance company, and all those kinds of things, which were great. Did get some experience out of it, but really was like, yeah, this is not really utilizing this energy that I've got. So for me, I was like, what am I going to do? I knew that I wanted to do international business. I had a degree in economics and in Spanish. I'm fluent in Spanish, and really wanted to do something international. So going from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Well, I want to go to New York. That's where you really could do some international business, albeit I have no experience, right? Don't have any real experience. I've worked in restaurants. I've, worked in a bar and done those kinds of things. Felt like I was a pretty good salesperson, but that was about the extent of my real experience in life professionally at that point. So I was on my way to New York and had fallen in love, of course, and so my girlfriend, who's now my wife and the mother of my 2 children, was still in college, and what are we going to do? So I came back to Virginia Beach, and I was fortunate to start working at a company called Coastal Training Technologies, which at the time it was called Coastal Video Communications. It was a company that started in 1984 that was focused on training for workers, mostly industrial safety training, and they had media basically that we sold. So it was, at the time, manuals, videotapes, workbooks, those kinds of things, to help train people to stop workplace accidents from happening. There was a compliance component of it, so you were trying to comply with OSHA legislation. When I started with the company, I had 52 people. We were doing maybe $3 or $4 million in sales a year. Probably, if making anything, just kind of making ends meet more than anything else. But I was fortunate to work for somebody, Paul Michaels, who is just one of the most amazing entrepreneurs that I've ever met and had the fortune to come across. Somebody who, during the course of the growth of the company, which eventually grew to 650 people to $50+ million in sales, which we sold the company to DuPont, was always on the edge, right? What I mean by that, always being on the edge, is always, had the most guts of anybody in the room, okay? There were times where Paul was driving around, and I'm not exaggerating, you know, in a Chevette, or the equivalent of whatever the Chevette was at that time. You probably don't know, the young people don't know, but it was kind of like a, I don't know what you would call it, but not a nice car. And we all had nicer cars than he did, and his house was on the hawk, and you know, it was always a game with the bank and the financing, but always investing in the future. Never looking to suck money out of the company for his own personal gain, always investing in the future of the company. And that's something I think you need to consider as you're investing in yourself and the idea of a startup of a company. Okay? It's not all about you. We all have this aspiration. I'm going to invent the next widget and start the next company and make $1 million and only have to work 5 hours a day. Really, that's BS at the end of the day, especially in the early stages and in a startup stage. You've got to be 100% focused. So anyways, I walked into this company. I did, as I said, spoke Spanish, and I saw this, you know, all these factories and these companies in the Caribbean and in South America. They've got kind of some of the same issues, and we were realizing that, you know, all these same companies that we were selling to in the United States, they all had factories down there, so of course they wanted to have standardization. So I picked up a book, started out with a book of manufacturing companies in Puerto Rico, and just started calling them up, picking up the telephone. And we had translated a few of our products into Spanish, and all of a sudden we got a lot of momentum quickly, So in like the second year of our Latin America division, which I started, we did $3 million in sales, and we really started to get things going.
So I got to ask, how could Spanish in junior high, and it didn't stick? How did you learn?
I lived in Spain, so my dad was in the military, as I mentioned earlier. So my last 2 years of high school, I went to Spain, in Rota, Spain, and I played for a Spanish club soccer team and traveled all around, and nobody on this was a poor area of Spain, nobody spoke English. So it was like either you wanted, there were two things. All right, and I'll be honest with you, this is a candid room, right? I was playing soccer, the Spanish girls were beautiful, and there was no drinking age, right? So I was like, all right, I'm in. So at the end of the day, you kind of learned to, you were less afraid of having the conversation with the pretty girl because maybe you had a couple beers in you and you were... So anyways, that's how I picked up Spanish. That's a whole nother story, but sorry about that. So anyways, I came in and quickly built something, but nevertheless, we were calling up, we were talking to companies, we were shipping these products from Virginia Beach to Venezuela or Chile or Argentina or all these places. It wasn't easy to do, honestly, and because we had media products and a lot of custom regulations were around media products, it was difficult. So I quickly became DHL's best customer in Hampton Roads. Those of you who don't know DHL, they're very specialized in international shipments, but we became their biggest customers, not only in Virginia Beach, but in this whole area, because we were shipping out products all day long. We really became a big customer for them. But it was difficult. You know, you had challenges, and it was expensive as you can imagine, shipping a box of some training materials from Virginia Beach off of Brickhouse Court near Kings Grant to Buenos Aires in Argentina. And it was cumbersome. So, but nevertheless, we were selling like crazy. Were we making any money? Not really. We weren't losing money, but we weren't making. But we were growing, and we were building our brand, and we were telling a great story during the course of that. So that led to one of the places we decided was like a great market, and some of the things we did, and working with a great entrepreneur affords you opportunities that you'd never have. Or being that entrepreneur affords you opportunities that you'd never have, right? So we decided, wow, look at Brazil. That's like almost 200 million people. I mean, they're self-sustaining from a resource perspective. So much manufacturing. They make all their own stuff. Man, they've got petroleum companies, electricity companies. They've got pharmaceutical companies, food companies, all the companies that we were already selling to. They had them in spades, and they were big, really big. So we started, and I started to try and speak Portuguese and call them up and talk to them. And I was like, man, this is a great market. They're interested, but we really can't get the products there because they really had kind of put up the rules and said, no, you can't ship media products in here. So going to Paul Michaels and saying, Paul, man, this is an unbelievable market. Having proven the concept a bit, Paul's like, let's go set up an office in Brazil. So let me look at my dates here just to remember when in fact it was, but really back in 1996, we hopped on a plane on New Year's Eve from here. There were 3 of us that flew down on, we struck the new year on the plane, got down to Brazil, spent almost 3 weeks in Brazil, left Brazil with an office, an attorney, an accountant, and set up an office in Curitiba, Brazil. Okay. We set up an office with about $34,000 in total expenses. We actually took down suitcases because at the time you really couldn't get servers, you couldn't get the stuff you needed to set up your network and your infrastructure. You couldn't get it into the country, or if you were going to buy it there, it was so expensive. And it wouldn't have our software installed on. This is pre-internet days, of course, right, where you could get everything and download it. So we actually took some servers. We put old beat-up cases on the outsides of them. We put them in suitcases and rolled them into the country and walked in, set them up in our office. Another thing we discovered then, where our business was based on the telephone, that's how we talked to people and sold to them, you couldn't get phone lines there, right? Phone lines took you 30 days to get. You had to pay this upfront money. So thank goodness we got down there and really understood something, and that'll be part of what I'm talking about today, that you would have never received from a book, or maybe not even from the internet at this point, and information was not available like it is today at that point. So we got down there, we set up the office for $34,000, and within about a 5-month period, we never had to send any money back to Brazil down there. All right, so we built something up. So we're like, man, this is pretty cool. Maybe we could do this again. Maybe we could do it somewhere else. Well, we ended up, during my course of time at Coastal, we set up offices in Spain, in the Netherlands. We made an acquisition of a company there. We set up an office in Germany. We set up an office in Mexico. We set up our contact center and an office in the Philippines. We set up a huge office in India where we did all of our programming. So really just kind of opened the doors for a company that was based here to become a multinational company. So I got to do that a number of different times. And learn each time. One of the unique things about doing it in these different countries is it's a whole different ballgame. I talked about the phone lines. Each country had 10 things that were hurdles that weren't in the other country. So where I'm now in this model of franchising, where kind of everything's pretty standard, you might have some different pool regulations in California and Texas and Florida than you do in some other states. But it's pretty standard as far as setting up a business in the United States. Not so much when you come to international. So anyways, that's a long story about my experience with Coastal. A couple things to come out of that. Number one, working with just one of the greatest entrepreneurs and the person that had the biggest guts in the room always afforded opportunities that would have never happened, right? Whereas a lot of companies, and I'll talk about this, require, just business plans and projections and modeling before you get to make any sort of decision, much less just go, right? We were, all right, let's hop on a plane, let's go down and spend 3 weeks down there and figure it out and check it out and learn so much during that period of time. So that was an entrepreneurial experience for me that was using other people's money at the end of the day. I had a very small equity piece over the years that I earned, and when we sold the company to DuPont, I stayed and I worked for DuPont for 3 years, which was a whole nother story of going from a company that started with 50 people, worked up to 650 people, and became then 77,000 people, which was what DuPont had at that time. So totally different roles, as you can expect. While I was at Coastal, a buddy of mine and I, because I felt like, man, this is cool. I like this entrepreneurial thing. This is fun. This is really fun to start something, see the decisions you made impacted your business, not 3 years down the road, but today, right? You're making decisions and you see the impact today. That's one of the benefits, obviously, of being an entrepreneur, but one of the pressures of being an entrepreneur as well. Anyways, my buddy and I had, one of the places I traveled to frequently was Germany, and he said, there's these things called balance bikes, and it's a product that really hasn't taken too much shape in the United States. We should come up with a better mousetrap at the end of the day. And so that's the Kazam there. We drew it in my garage on a piece of cardboard, and then my neighbor down the street was is an architect, Greg Battaglia. He's a great guy. Greg's a CAD guy, so he took our little chicken scratch on a piece of cardboard and brought it to life. And then we said, you know, this is really something cool. I think we got something great here. Let's see if we can patent this product. I know you're going through that process right now. Unfortunately, we never got a utility patent, but we did get a design patent. So then we're like, all right, this could be a company. This could be really something. So, well, how do you get a product that you got a drawing of and a piece of cardboard here? How do you get that thing made, right? Where do you get it made? I'm not an engineer, right? I'm a business guy, a numbers guy. I'm not an engineer at all. I don't know how to get stuff made. I don't know anything about metals. I don't know anything about manufacturing, other than a little bit about the safety of manufacturing, which I learned over time. I didn't know a whole lot there. So, start researching. Fortunately, this time there's the internet. You can do a lot of research and make some phone calls. And I ended up traveling over to China a number of times, visiting factories that were prospective factories to build the Kazam. Right? Learned a ton. Learned so much going as opposed, sounds like you got a friend there next to you, sorry. I can tell by your body language there. You got a seat up here next to the 26-year-old gentleman there.
Take it, thank you very much.
So learned by traveling out there and kind of seeing it, once again, not taking just, you know, consideration what you could learn by typing up on the internet and seeing pictures of the factory and nice smiley pictures of the owners of the factory and saying, you know, you of course do the calls and who they made for and do all that kind of stuff. But going to a factory in China or anywhere else for that matter really teaches you a tremendous amount.
So question, before you made the decision to travel all the way to China, you didn't even have a prototype made? You only had it on paper or in engineering?
Well, we had gotten a prototype made in California, but we realized quickly you couldn't make this product in the U.S. and be competitive with it, right?
Sure.
We quickly realized that in order to keep the product under $100, which we knew based on researching the market, and I'll talk a little bit about that, was a no-go. You weren't able to make it in the United States. And unfortunately, because I like things that are made in the United States, but I'm also a pragmatic person to understand what's realistic and what's not.
Yeah, no, I understood that. The question about really was really centered around the prototype and have you validated customer development?
Well, I'll talk about validation. What we did for validation was did get a prototype. You talked about going to a trade show. We went to the Las Vegas, or the bike show out in Las Vegas, and we set up our booth. I knew that stuff, right? I know how to do marketing. That's something I'm pretty comfortable with. Manufacturing, not so much at the time. But anyways, we set up a nice booth. We produced some video content. I know I saw that. You get out there and you put your nice booth and your shirts and you got your brand. And branding's interesting too, right? What do you need about branding now? Think about how difficult or challenging, but what a great opportunity your brand is. Because it's not just about creating a brand. It's making sure you get your trademark. What URL is available, right? Because your business, I guarantee you, regardless of what it is going to incorporate the web as an information source. For us, it was a great sales channel. So for us, we wanted something fun. We wanted something that kids would like to say. We decided we liked the letter Z. So we're sitting there typing, doing everything, searching every URL available, and it was fun. But regardless, we came up with the brand. We had a prototype. We went out to Las Vegas to the bike show. Okay, we're thinking, okay, we're going to sell to all the bike shops around the United States as a channel for us. We were up around the booth, and we had produced the product and the prototype in a relatively inexpensive way. Well, the people came around, the bike guys, and most of them are guys, no offense, but most of them are guys. They look at that, man, that thing's a piece. That's a piece. We wouldn't sell that in our shop. Well, why not? Well, the headset's plastic. It doesn't have these components. It's not powder coated. Okay, the bike guys quickly were like, that's not the quality level. So you have to decide, in that case, is that the channel that you want, or do you modify the product? And we did a combination of both at the end of the day. But going out to that trade show, why is that important? Well, first of all, those are your prospective buyers or your channels, and you learn so much in a trade show in a quick period of time because you got all these people in so many, in one place. Yeah. You can't do that by knocking on doors of individual particular customers, but you certainly can do that. So I very much recommend trade shows or conferences as a channel for you. So once again, that was my experience with Kazam. Ended up the Kazam, our company went on Shark Tank, and we did get an investment from Mark Cuban. So we have, I sold my shares of the company this summer, so I'm no longer involved in that business, but really took something from a cardboard drawing in a garage to a material company. So it was really fun and a lot of experience. Some lessons on that. You can't be too proud to do anything when it's your own business, right? And that's the frustrating and the crappy work that has to be done, and the fun stuff that has to be done too. But it's a 24/7 job when you start something like pretty much anything at that point, but particularly in a startup phase. We don't have any employees. Ended up, my wife was working there, and my business partner's wife was working there, and you try and get as creative with your resources as you possibly can. I was in banking upon leaving Coastal. I was in banking, so I had a unique situation where I had an income, a decent income, and I was moonlighting with Kazam on the side, basically, right? Which is a lot of people. You talked about that, Zach. Say, well, I've been in the corporate world, and God, man, it's tough. It's tough. And I think in today's world, it's particularly tough because it's all about driving the bottom line number, which is true for any business, including your own. You got to drive the bottom line number or you don't survive at the end of the day. But you can easily become a number and be out of a job, and loyalty is challenged in today's environment, I would say. So I decided to go make a career change. I got contacted by a headhunter who said, I've got a job that's a corporate sales officer at a bank, at a credit union actually. I said, well, I don't know anything about finance. Well, I know something about finances, but not about financial services. I'm pretty good with an income statement, and I'm not bad financially, but certainly not a banker. Well, that's okay. They want somebody to come in and change the culture to be a more sales-oriented culture. So, okay, sounds pretty cool. So I ended up doing that for 3.5 years, which was interesting, challenging, learned a ton, which I would recommend anybody who could spend a stint in financial services. It's invaluable to be on the other side of the window, especially if you're going to be an entrepreneur and you want to get money for your concept. Knowing how that process works is invaluable. It's great. That said, money's a commodity. Not a whole lot of creativity around a commodity product. Very regulated. So if you're one that works well like this, I suggest it. Not so much me, right? But that said, it was a great experience. And now I have on to my last stage, I hope, from a career development standpoint, where I joined a company called Buzz Franchise Brands to start a new brand called Pool Scouts. So we are the franchisor for Mosquito Joe. It's been a very successful franchise concept. We have 273 territories sold around 27 different states. We have north of 50,000 customers around the United States. We have 110 franchisees, and that's happened within a 3-year period. So joined that group, invested as well to be a part of that company, and have started Pool Scouts. So anyways, that's a little bit about me, a long conversation, sorry about that. So you want to hatch, sorry about that, but a product or a company. Here's some thoughts that I put together, and everybody has their own process. And you can go out on the internet and say, I'm sure you can Google and find a million different steps to take, right? I'm trying to put it in the context of what I've done, and I welcome anybody's input or feedback there. So you got to define a few things, and I'm going to go into these in detail. What does the market look like and who will buy it? How do you make or deliver it, and what does it cost to do so? Modeling and business planning, I'll spend some time on that. Do you have the resources? It's not just about money, right? Money buys you some things, but money doesn't buy you time. Money doesn't buy you dedication, right? Commitment, okay? So staying power, those are things that money doesn't buy you. And they're all required to be successful as an entrepreneur. So do you have the resources? How do you get funding? Every business that you're going to start needs money at the end of the day. How do you get it? Lots of different unique ways to get money out there now. Setting the timeline and goals. Goals are a big thing. I don't care what you're doing. I'm a goal-oriented person, and I think to be successful, you've got to have tangible goals with deadlines and timelines in order to be successful. The reset button and the constant need for shifting paradigms. I'll talk about that. And then defining and celebrating success. And I'll talk about a couple examples of that. So a little bit about like assessing the market. Who's going to buy your product